I guess we can talk even though it's being recorded. We just can't talk about any of our spy stuff. Uh-oh, Sue, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, it looks like your audio is still connecting,
Oh,
Sue.
yes. Okay, I am unmuted myself. There was a cat meowing like crazy near me. So now she stopped. Okay.
Sorry, I missed the Kadirsk dojo yesterday.
Yeah,
There
well,
was
we didn't, yeah,
Oh, you didn't have
Oh.
one.
the,
Good.
on the, I think it's the third Tuesday, the NAUA has an academy meeting. So we
Right, right.
for that, so.
Well, okay, good. I was a little I was reluctant to I had a busy day. Leave it at that.
Did you? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I hope you've recovered. Hey,
Thanks.
Betsy.
Hey, Todd, Luba,
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Bernstein.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Love the dogs.
Those are Lynn's. Yeah. The dogs are cute, but happier to see Lynn. So. And hey, Sue, thanks for joining.
She's muted, but the mouth says hello.
Yeah, you're muted, Sue. You might be able to unmute.
Sometimes you have to do it on in multiple places. It happens to all the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you should try maybe in your kitchen, upstairs.
No, Todd.
It's
Can you
usually
hear me?
down below on
She
the
did it.
left side of the
Can
screen.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
You did it.
I'm using my cell phone because I'm not in town and I've never done that before. So
Wow.
good for me.
Good for
Oh,
you.
good.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks for joining, even though you're not in town, Sue. Same here,
No.
actually. I got a
Yeah.
whirling fan above my head in Lubbock, Texas. So,
Oh, I'm in Nevada. I'm in Henderson, Nevada.
Oh,
sounds good.
Come home tomorrow.
Devon told me you were in Florida.
No, I go to, let's see, I'm in Nevada visiting family, and then the end of the month of February, I go to Alabama.
Oh,
I have all these snowbird friends that I go and see for
Nice.
a few days.
What part of Alabama, Sue? I need to get started on our meeting, I know, but
On Orange Beach, right on the coast.
yes, I know it.
Yeah.
I know it well. I have family down there.
Oh, good.
I'm a snowbird to the unglamorous part of Alabama where there is no beach.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to going there and maybe doing some photography. We'll
Okay.
see.
Oh, nice. Well, let me, if it's okay, Tom, you had a question?
Well, I was just going to say, before we get started here, we're missing Catherine.
Catherine, she told me she won't be able to make it. So we've got everybody we're going to get, except Lilia. Because we
Okay,
haven't had Lilia in a while.
I just about Lillian, she's the only one of us who's working, and as a teacher, she maybe has complications at the end of a school day. I'm just wondering whether we should explore starting a half an hour later in hopes that she can more easily attend. But that's just a thought. I miss having her here, and there is a requirement that she not miss more than 3 consecutive meetings. And I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah. Todd, maybe we could ask you to reach out to Lilia. See if
I would-
changing our meeting might be.
I would be glad to do that.
No,
No.
Todd. Tom. I was asking Todd Eckloff to
Todd.
do that.
Oh,
Yeah, I think he's got a relationship with Lilia, so that's why I'm asking, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Okay, let us call this meeting to order. We are ready to start, so hopefully everybody's got the agenda. I do have screen sharing capabilities today, so we can help with some of the policies and procedures, stuff that's on the agenda. The first order of business is to amend or approve tonight's agenda. Any additions or changes to the agenda that we have in front of us for this evening? Hearing no changes, we will consider it approved as it stands. Next is our minutes from hey, by the way, you guys, I'm actually on my laptop and looking at the document, so it's a little hard to see if you raise your hand, so please try to use a verbal to catch my attention. The next thing is to amend and then approve, amend if necessary, and approve our minutes from our last board meeting on the 15th of November, 2023, which were sent out with our agenda. Thank you, Marilyn, as usual.
I saw no need for a change from my perspective.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else see anything we need to update? Okay, awesome. Hearing no changes, we will approve the meeting minutes from November 15th as they were sent. So thank you again, Marilyn, for that. Really appreciate it. Next two items on our agenda are Todd. You can combine those any way that you see valuable, as opening words and a minister's report. So
Okay. Both will be brief. So you know, we have 8.1 billion people in the world, which means that on most anything issues that we hold dear, there are millions of people that agree with us. There may be millions that disagree, but there are millions who agree. And so here's a quote from Howard Zinn. Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. Those are my opening words.
thank you.
And as for a minister's report, I'm gonna yield most of my time to Lynn for when she gets to the shared ministry team report. But yeah, I'm been in to try to get everything I can sort of taken care of before I take a month break coming up toward the end of next week. It's been kind of busy, and folks are kind enough to keep throwing things at me. So every time I think I'm ahead, I'm behind. But that's going well. I did meet today with an NAUA team. That was our first meeting about having what we're going to call a yearly summit rather than an annual meeting or anything. You know, we sort of give it our own signature. And we have decided for the third weekend of October. And what that will mean is that anyone who's a member of NAUA can attend virtually, but we also want to have it in person here in Spokane and utilize the church space for the meetings and the big gatherings in the sanctuary. Don't anticipate our first meeting is going to be so large that we would need a convention center or anything. So we blocked that week off so we can, you know, use a couple of days for setup and then have a long weekend for conferences and meetings and a worship service and whatnot. So pretty exciting.
Regarding
Okay.
that, Todd, will you be working to set up households that might be able to sponsor visitors?
You know, I hope so, Tom. Yeah, that's a good idea. We definitely want to make sure there's no major conferences going on that will prevent people from getting hotels that week, but it would be nice to set up some home hospitality too. Yeah, my guess is we won't have a lot of, you know, I mean, I would expect about 100 people would come, but we could get 200 or 300. you never know. And then certainly people online, we are going to send out a survey, sort of asking folks to let us know if they're going to be able to attend either in person or online, so we get a rough idea at least of what it might look like. But that'd be great for folks to have some home hospitality.
Yeah, I think I might be interested in that.
Yeah, for sure, Dick.
I think others too, especially in the, Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia.
People who can drive over for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah, so I'm gonna take a break and then I'm gonna get right back into it. And I've already got a service scheduled in March in Salem, Oregon, and then in April I'm going to go back to Hayward, California, and speak there. So I'm staying busy with the mission of doing what I think we've succeeded in doing, and that is saving liberal religion. I think we saved it. So now it's just building on our success and watching our organization grow, and hopefully UUCS will be able to be a sustained liberal community from now on because of this. So great. Yeah. That's all I've got.
Okay, very cool. Remind us maybe real quick, your leave is February, the month of February 1st
Yeah.
through the 28th. Okay.
Yes.
Okey-doke. Perfect.
If anyone calls me, they will be arrested.
Yeah, make it so.
We'll do our best to put out, there's and email responses and that kind of stuff, but
Yeah. Okay. All right, awesome. Thank you, Todd. On to the next agenda item then, which is going to require a motion and approval by our Board of Trustees, and that is for lifetime membership for Steve Johnston. And Luba, I'm leaning on you to explain a little further if you can. Tom can, I'm sure, help about what the lifetime membership entails.
Sure. Do you want me to say first or Tom? Well, I'll go first.
Perfect.
According to our records in the church, and I talked to Rebecca, Steve became the member of this church in April 13, 1994. And for 2.5 years or more, he's been living in assisted living. He was moved there because of his condition. So because of his mental health, I would say, condition, and the absence of any monies except for just very little sum from Social Security, which is taken by the state for his keeping in that assisted living. He receives some pocket money, but of course not able to contribute financially. And he's been very upset about that and asked me repeatedly what can be done. That is why on his behalf, I request that he would be granted. And this way, he would not bother or be nervous or stressed about the issue.
Right.
Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you, Luba.
One
ahead,
of the
Tom.
one of the bylaw requirements is that we have the approval of the senior minister. And so I have a motion, but it does include approval from you, Todd. So can you weigh in on that point?
yeah, I think that's a great thing to do. Steve's been around a long time, and he's got some issues for sure, but he's always so thrilled and excited to be at the church and part of the church and identify with the church. And if we can help him out in this way, that's great. And I think he deserves it. You know, he's been around long enough. He should be a lifetime member. So I think that'd be great. He was very happy, and he wanted me to make the announcement Sunday because I wasn't going to be here for over a month. So he wanted me to make it. So I'm sorry for jumping the gun a little bit by congratulating him, but I felt confident the board was going to honor that request. So
Well, let me make a motion, and then if there'll be any discussion, we could discuss it while there's a motion on the floor. And for you, Marilyn, I do have this written out and I can send it to you if it's verbatim or if we change it. I move, after discussion, approval by our senior minister and review of Article 2, Section 6 of the bylaws, that Steve Johnson meets the spirit and intent of Article 2, Section 6, and therefore qualifies for UUCS lifetime membership status, and is hereby granted such status, including recording in official records, and further that a letter on church letterhead and signed by our senior minister and president of this board of trustees be sent to Mr. Johnson, and further that the motion be included in the letter. So that needs a second.
I'll second.
Okay,
Any discussion?
Sounds fantastic.
I agree. Sounds wonderful. The spirit and intent of a fine member. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and it is approved. Awesome.
nice motion, Tom.
Very, very nicely put together, Tom. Thank you.
okay.
Okay. What's next?
Me.
Lynn, yes. And you
Who's
have
me?
hey, and we're a little ahead of schedule here, my dear. So wax on, I suppose.
Okay. So I am going to be presenting a report on behalf of the shared ministry team, who this is our first report, one of many that we hope to be able to present to the board based on conversations that we have had with members of our congregation. And this particular report is on the topic of whether or not the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane should leave the UUA. So we did not send out surveys. We had conversations with people who wanted to have conversations about the topic. And we went about it in our meeting in the same way that we have done other exercises in our Kurdkara dojo. And that by that, I mean, we started by sharing our own thoughts on the topic. And then we went into more of an in-depth conversation about some of the pros for leaving, some of the cons for leaving, and reasons that we might need to stay. The purpose of this report, which I am going to share my screen and share with you, and then I will also email it to each one of you, the board members, so that you have it. But our purpose in doing this was not to make any, for us certainly, to make any decisions, but really more to inform you of some of the ideas and thoughts and sometimes misconceptions that some of our congregants have, in case or in hopes, I think, that you might be using this report to plan whatever sort of education might need to come from the board as we go further into making a really informed decision about this important topic. So let me share this document, and it does include all of the things, our own input, and then we just literally listed the pros and cons. So let me make sure. Yeah, okay. I can share the screen. Okay. So I'll just kind of read through it. I know you all can read, but I think I'll just read through it with you, and then I'll answer whatever questions you have and send it on its way. So these are the opinions from the team members that were present, and all of us were there that day that we had this meeting. And truly, we were just open and honest as we could be about our own personal biases and preferences. So people thought we should leave the UUA. They're happy, they're angry at them and happy at the prospect of our church being one of the first to resign from the illiberal institution. Someone's angry that our minister is still being defamed on the UUA website. Somebody was shocked by what's been going on at the UUA ever since they attended the GA of 2019. They didn't feel very comfortable at that GA and thought they were worried about even being a member of a UU institution at all, because it didn't really fit with their values. Same with the next person. And then we had one person who was not really angry, but just disappointed in the behavior of some of the UUA behind the scenes. These are the reasons why we should leave the UUA. And they're all little bullet points here. Having different values, not appreciating the covenantal relationship with the UUA, certainly the treating of all whites as racists and white supremacists being unacceptable. UUA recommended ministers is a concern for some to give us a minister in there that would meet their criteria would not be acceptable. Some people said we need to support Todd, who's been treated in ways against our principles. In response to some of the worries we can't about our curriculum for RE, people said that we can find replacement needs for RE and other services from other places. Historic UU principles are bedrock foundation. Quitting the association, which has been demeaning, seems justified. The UUA response to us suggests it believes our congregation is ill and needs fixing, and that came about even back when we were still having some of those problems where they sent their healthy relations team in to try to fix us. Most of us are aware of the unethical and secret meetings that were kind of going on behind the scenes with a few of our members, some of them in leadership without care for the damage that they were doing. This may be a little bit of a misconception here that we're not paying anyway. We're certainly not paying our fair share according to what the UUA would ask from us, which would be close to $40,000. And I think we're paying them about $1,000 now. So we're just supporting them for a token amount. Todd's already spoken about the individual dignity being removed from our principles, and pushing collectivism. People believing this is the antithesis of Unitarianism. They represent the opposite of our values. They haven't been responsive to views that are not their own. They haven't been responsive to us when we've reached out to ask for certainly the removal of Todd's name from their website stuff. They don't listen to people. They squelch and ignore the dissenting voices, violating their own bylaws. And that was the example they gave, is not contacting us according to their bylaws when the new church, INUUC, was formed. They're supposed to contact a church in the community where a new one wants to grow or begin. And they did not do that. Not that we would have stopped them, or stopped INUUC, but they still didn't follow their own bylaws. They did block Todd from running for the UUA president. And they also ignored their requirement to have 2 or more candidates for their president. And then somebody thinks they believe they've made a farce of democracy. Okay, and then the reasons that the UUCS should stay is that historically we have had district help in finding ministers. There's a little bit response down below for some of the, at the end of this, for some of the responses to some of these these statements too. Some people believe that we need to stay for the services that we receive. Somebody thinks we need a national presence and a connection that's recognizable for people who in our community who may want to join us or coming from another UU congregation outside of Spokane. Some people are happy as long as the 7 principles stay intact, although we won't know about that until this upcoming GA. Staying will facilitate a healing process with INUUC. Stay in both the UUA and NAUA while the cost is low and we are hoping for change. Some people think as members we can still vote and still have a voice in the direction of the UUA. And then somebody says we should stay until they kick us out and make them kick us out, which would reflect more poorly on them, I think is the point here, than on us.
Yes.
And then this is the responses to some of the reasons for some of the statements that people made. So there are no longer UUA districts or district offices. The UUA is not able to meet the demand for ministers now nationally. That's one of the hugest problems that the UUA has been having. Not that we would probably seek somebody recommended from the UUA anyway, but there are no more districts or district offices to do such a thing. That might have been at least a district closer to us and knowing what our needs were rather than coming all the way from Boston or something. And then, of course, what sort of minister would the UUA process give to UUCS is a question. The third bullet point up here about being part of a national organization, we are members already of NAUA, which is a national organization, and certainly open to UUs and Unitarians and Universalists and anybody who wants to be part of that liberal organization. So we do have a national presence. We don't receive any services right now from the UUA except for some benefits for staff. So that would definitely be something that we would need to be have some foresight into making sure those things are taken care of before we removed ourselves, should we decide to remove ourselves. Suggesting it would facilitate a healing process with INUUC raises the question of whether or not that's a UUCS goal. So that might be some individuals' goals, but that hasn't come about, as far as anyone knows, as a goal from our church. And then staying both in the UUA and the NAUA is actually, while we're hoping for them to change and get their act together, is actually a reasonable point. And same with staying in the UUA until they kick us out is also a reasonable point. Just again, that it would reflect pretty poorly on them to do such a thing. And that is our report. So it should give you some information about the things that people are talking about, some of the concerns that they had, and some of the things that they might need some education about or some more information about. Questions?
I have one comment that no one brought up the issue that if Spokane withdraws from the UUA might demand a name change for Unitarian Universalists, which because they did that for this breakaway congregation down in Austin, Texas. They demanded a name change, saying you could not use that name, Unitarian Universalist. And then that would be more like kicking us out in some sense, which some sense that will be just perfectly fine. But I know some one of the other issues, it's probably a real issue, is that as long as you have the name Unitarian Universalist, there'll be people from other areas who might come and look for that name. If they don't see it, they may not find us unless someone guides it. And they were saying having that name is an advantage in terms of recognition and referrals. That's just simply a reality. So that's an issue that I don't know how that might turn out. Maybe they might decide that they weren't going to not to do that, even though they did in Austin, Texas, because they don't want to make a big deal out of it. But it could be an issue.
Okay. Betsy, do you want to call on
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. I see a hand up.
I had somewhat the same concern as Dick, and I think when you maybe present this in a larger context, if it gets to a congregational meeting or a special congregational meeting, we could drop the name Universalist and just have something such as the First Unitarian Society of Spokane, and anybody doing a Google search for Unitarian Universalism, that would pop up if we were on a website because the name of Unitarian being there. The other comment I have is that when such a presentation is ultimately made, the more detail about what we would lose as far as staff benefits and what would be our options, some realistic examples of options that could replace those loss of benefits.
Yeah, I would agree with Tom. I mean, the UUA, I think, could make a case that they own Unitarian Universalism. I still have my doubts about that because those are two terms that have been around forever, that they just sandwiched them together. So, but nevertheless, we've been around a lot longer than the UUA as the Unitarian Society of Spokane, and we could continue as the Unitarian Church of Spokane. You notice they haven't come after NAUA, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think they tried to defend in Austin that they tried to defend Unitarian Universalists as some kind of copyrighted or legal term.
They threatened them, yeah, they threatened them, and it wasn't even a letter from an attorney. It was a letter from the UUA pretending to be an attorney.
Yeah.
But I think that the what was the other point you made, Tom? Because I wanted to address, the benefits, yeah.
The benefits
Yeah.
that we would lose and how easily replaceable they might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that for most of my time here, we didn't even have benefits. The UUA didn't have benefits. And finally, they sort of used their collective power to get an organization to give us the breaks, the financial break of getting a sort of collective insurance, and that is something that was brokered through a third party, and so we can still do that. I mean, we can still go to those third parties and get our own insurance. I've never. There's only a couple of us that take advantage of it anyway. Rebecca and myself, and I don't really take much. I think I'm in their retirement fund, and most of my retirement I put it into another fund altogether. So it's not a great loss to me, but I'm quite sure we could find other ways to offer those benefits that we do, which again are not great benefits.
Okay, good to know, because I'm with Tom that we would want to be very clear about that very tangible, potentially tangible benefit. Doesn't sound like it's great, but let's be explicit about it, I suppose, if we get to that messaging point.
Yeah.
I have a question. Well, I really want to, talking back to Dick's point about the how effective the NAUA voice is in terms of getting it out into the mainstream of who's listening, and is it really a vehicle for us to, promote? Does that make sense? Did I?
About
garble that?
NAUA, you're asking about NAUA essentially, Bob?
Well, our general concerns and our whole the point that we're kind of different from the mainstream, especially in their eyes, but how it comes across to people who might be otherwise open to our ideas.
I don't quite see what you're getting at, yeah.
I think the reason that I would be interested in staying on with the larger organization is so that we might be able to say that there's more here than what's being presented by the large organization. In other words, there's options here, and is this a vehicle to do that?
I'm still not too clear what you're really getting at.
It made sense to me when I wrote it down. Now I'm struggling.
That's okay. It's not the only time we'll be having this conversation, Bob, actually, this was the very first kind of set of conversations that I think the shared ministry team put together. It was kind of exploratory, I guess, right, Lynn?
Right. And our purpose was not to make any recommendation. Really, our purpose was to inform the board of what people are talking about. It's not an exhaustive list because we did not poll every single person. So there may be other points out there that people want to bring up, but these are the things that people did
Right.
speak about. I also, not that it matters right now, but my understanding about the church in Texas or wherever that was that it was a brand new one.
Yes, it
And
was.
so I don't see how the UUA gets to define who's a UU church. There are other UU churches who are not members of the UUA. They just didn't leave the UUA.
Yeah,
So
that remains to be explored legally. They tried to claim a legal basis, but as Todd pointed out, perhaps that could be challenged, especially if, like, the Spokane Church has been established for a long time under that name. Could they force the Spokane Church to change its name or not? You guys are bigger, you can afford a good lawyer on that. That would probably be more contentious than a brand new small church with few resources in Austin, Texas.
yeah, and again, I think it would reflect so poorly on them that.
Well, and my thought on that is that that's a bridge to be crossed whenever it would arise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really not an issue unless we wanted to say, well, no, we're going to keep Unitarian Universalist and go to court. But there's Unitarians all over the world. There have been for years that are not part of the UUA. It's just as well as Universalist. It would be really, really hard for them to make a claim that they own that. They might own Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian Universalism. I think a court would probably reject that too if it actually ever went to court.
Lula, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I understood Bob's point, or the question, whether our church can have some influence on the other churches that UA members to go the liberal way. Is this the thought?
I think the idea that it gives us possibly a voice that might not otherwise be offered in the larger sense, in the larger arena.
Are you saying if we stay in the UUA, we'd have a voice there?
Well, that's what I'm asking, really.
Oh,
No, that's the point of view. That's a valid point of view. Yes, that's a valid point of view.
And it's one of the things I think it was in the report, essentially, is that stay inside and fight from inside, essentially.
In fact, that's what I've been doing, and I may do more of that. Just to, you need multiple avenues and the bigger battle, you see?
Sure.
Yeah, my point is, it gets to a point where why are we fighting them? They don't represent our values.
Mhm.
They've said they don't believe in individual dignity anymore. And we have an association that does. And we should concentrate on doing the good things that we can do. I don't need to change the UUA. We'll be here if they're ever ready to come back around. That's the whole point of NAUA coming into existence. But I don't want to spend any more of my time fighting with them. I've given up on them for now. And if they come to their senses, great. There's an organization here ready to reconcile.
Yeah, for example, this discussion that we're having right now, there's an opportunity cost because we're spending time thinking about leaving or going an organization that, as Todd just put, we are not aligned with. Oh, I can't believe I said the word aligned. I get so sick of hearing that in corporate speak. Sorry. That we are not congruent with, whatever. But yeah, we're spending time on it instead of something else. You know? Yes, Tom?
Well, okay, we have a report that is going to be sent to the board. It seems to me if we're going to start a larger conversation, if that's the intent, then how widely available will this report be
Down there.
to others?
That was
It's
open.
up to you. It's yours. We're done. It's all yours now.
Okay,
Yeah, and we gave it to you with that intention that it would be yours. You know, it would be if it's just a starting point that gives information. Okay, here's a variety of different things that have been said.
Mhm.
Information as we move forward with conversations with the congregation, or do we want to put this in the sun and make it available to everybody to see some of the things that have been said? I mean, it's totally up to you how to use it. It's a tool basically at this point for your use.
with that, then I would move that this report be circulated to our membership list and that it be put in the sun with a link to it with an introduction from our president.
Are you saying two different things, Tom? An
I'm
email
saying-
and the Sun?
Yeah, because the sun's more widely circulated, I think, than our membership list. Am I wrong on that?
I wouldn't send an email. I would put it in the Sun. I think that's a great idea. But I wouldn't send an email specifically to share the results of the shared ministry report. I
Mhm.
wouldn't. I mean, it just seems a little, we got to be careful about sending those emails out from the Board of Trustees or for anything kind of, unless there's something that, why isn't it just a piece of news information, more or less like everything else in the Sun? I see Luba nodding her head. Any
Yes.
other
I
thoughts?
agree with that.
Dick? Yeah. Okay.
Well, okay, we
I'm
didn't
happy
get,
to write an intro, Tom. Happy to do that.
we didn't get a second for the motion, just for the purpose of discussion. Okay. there
Give a send out.
There isn't a second then, so that the motion dies from lack of a second. But in the conversation, let me ask this. I hear, and I don't know how good it is, that people don't read the Sun in depth. And if there's simply a link and not an email and it's in our members' inbox, maybe we can't separate out our members from our general mailing list. I don't know what kind of a problem that is.
You can do whatever you want. Will they see me?
We can reprint the report in the
Mine
Sun
doesn't
if
just
you're
pass
concerned
it.
about people clicking a
Not
link
over
inside
here.
the Sun and following it up. Is that what you're saying, Tom?
Well, yeah, I don't know how many people read the Sun is what it boils down to, and I've never seen any statistics on how well read it is. But I would like it to get into the hands of our membership so that it can be a topic of discussion over coffee or over a dinner. And then the board could decide later whether to actually bring it to a vote in a special meeting or a congregational meeting.
Dick, do you have your hand up?
Yeah. I know that this is not something that voting kind of thing. But I think it would be appropriate to send it out to stimulate discussion and to invite feedback. And there's send it out with an email that they can respond to with their own comments or questions. And then have some, as you said, maybe some follow-up meetings on Zoom or after church and this kind of thing where these things can be discussed. This should be sort of a study.
Well, it would take a direction of the board to do that since it's presented to the board. That's the point I'm making, whatever we do with it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, this
Yes,
is Jean Larson. Can you hear me?
Jean.
yes,
Okay, I'm just joining the meeting by phone. My computer wasn't working. My concern is that this is not an appropriate time to bring up an issue that might be divisive amongst the members of the church. I think we had many people leave the church because they didn't want to be around conflict. And I'm just thinking that this issue isn't important enough to have people even thinking about it at this time. In other words, let sleeping dogs lie. I think we need to find a project to engage people in a positive way rather than something that might once again divide the congregation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jean. Doug?
I'd just like to say in support of what Jean just said, that it seems to me we ought to just wait them out and not waste any more time on it. I hear what Todd is saying, and I wonder, is waiting them out and ignoring them for some unknown amount of time taking time, or is everything else we're talking about is going to take a lot of time? So my feeling is we can't predict the future. We can ignore them and maintain a peripheral presence that sometime in the future we may be glad we did.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to propose another. Okay, Todd, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my perspective, it is against my values to be part of the UUA. I think that they are opposite at this point to my values. They're working against the things that I value. So I'm not for being part of it, but more importantly, as far as this, whether or not you share this information, I think just putting it out there at this time, I would advise considering putting it out there as part of an overall plan. I know the board has at least been talking about bringing this up to the congregation. And so rather than just sort of saying, hey, let's publish this, let's publish this so that we can get something from it. What would be the purpose of publishing it? What would the board get out of it? What would the congregation get out of it? What is the follow-up? What would you want people to say, and how would you want them to respond once something like this gets out there? So I think it should be more have more intention around what you will want from it when you do share it, if you share it. Just my
Yeah. I think we have to share it for transparency. I think we need to do something. It's a report that's been collected. We thank the shared ministry team for putting it together. Whether we have a project behind it, which is what it would take, and I think what you're proposing, what Jean and Doug, I think, are speaking against, a project in order to follow through on this conversation that we need to have, because we would have to do something like that. So I guess I would like to make a proposal. Sorry, was there a comment?
Well, there is a chat from Marilyn who can't unmute for some reason.
Oh dear. Okay.
If you
Can
look
you
at
read
that.
it to us, Tom? What did she say?
And info would help with the report, as it isn't clear what members versus shared.
Oh, intro. He means the intro. Right. Yes.
I think that's what she means. She has into, but I think she meant info.
Intro, right. And I think you suggested that, Tom, in your proposal or motion or whatever, if it needs, Marilyn said yes. intro. Great. Um, an introductory paragraph, if we included it in the Sun. So I guess that's what I would like to propose. I'm not sure I want to propose, we've heard other, Tom's motion kind of died, I guess, right, Tom, so I'm putting an alternative out there that we, for transparency, we publish the shared ministry report in the Sun with an introductory paragraph, a little bit about like what Lynn said. I'd be happy to write that, sharing what we've learned, and kind of leave it at that for now.
Second,
That's my proposal.
And I would suggest that
second.
you make a point that there's no timeline involved here. And
Yes.
personally, I think it would be wise not to take any action at the very minimum until after this GA to see what happens
Yeah.
there.
Right, with the principles.
Or any
Yeah.
trans, I mean, it would, I would be opposed to action before this GA. But yeah, but be clear, we're not, there's no imminent decision. That's what I would say. It's
Okay.
like discussion and feedback, and there are issues and people are talking about it.
Okay, so I have a second. We've had some discussion. Is there any other discussion? So,
Yes, this is Jean again. I'd like to say one more thing. This is really broadening the issue, and that is that I feel like this kind of issue should come from a groundswell of the congregation, not from a group of 5 people that have decided that this is an issue that the congregation cares about. And for that reason, I don't think calling this transparency is well, I don't think that's what the reasoning you should use for putting it out. As I said, I just don't think that it is an issue that people care that much about, and I think we're going at this upside down. The concerns should come from the congregation and then be discussed at a visioning session or a group meeting where people make their thoughts known, and then it goes on up to a team or a task force to consider it and do the rest of the investigation.
right. I think we more or less agree with you, Jean, that that's what I mean when I say project. So all we're doing is publishing the results of this report without a timeline, as Dick suggested, so that it's available essentially for transparency reasons. And that's about as far as we're going at this moment. So because it would need all those things you described. So any other discussion? Okay, so is the motion approved to put it in the Sun with an introductory paragraph? Shared ministry report.
I think you ought to take a vote so that there's
Yeah,
minutes.
a vote. That's what I meant. I was asking for a vote. Sorry.
Yes.
How about
Okay.
you, Doug?
4 out of 5.
You're not voting, Doug?
He's voting against.
He's abstaining or voting against. You're muted, Doug.
How do you vote? I don't see what to do.
Just raise your hand if you want, if you're in favor.
Sorry.
Okay, we're raising hands. That's okay.
Yeah, I guess we're just doing, you
All right.
can raise your hand on the camera
So
since you're on the camera.
can you do
or
all in favor and all opposed?
all in favor? Yeah, for sure. Sorry. All in favor? Be a little more clear. Okay, 4. So we're still all opposed? Okay, 4-1. I don't know what that means in terms of the motion, because we're missing a person.
That's approved. We have 5 present and a majority of 5, simple majority of 5 is 3.
There we go. All right. So very good. Thank you, everybody. And let's see. Okay, next, very important. And I hope I moved it up early enough so that we can actually get this accomplished. This is a table of the bylaw amendment for the Memorial Garden. We tabled this from November. So Tom has sent us emails on this, and I believe has a or is this the thing you wanted me to share my screen for, Tom? Is that right?
Well, actually, we're on budget item 8 unless we all agree to jump to 13A, or if I got the wrong agenda.
Yeah, I think you got the wrong one because I rearranged them all. I hope everybody else is, goodness. This is
Okay.
item 8, bylaw amendment for Memorial Garden. I did move it up, so that we could get to it earlier.
All right, this is an item which has arisen before, and I want to bring the issue up so it gets kind of a thorough discussion between the board and the Memorial Garden team about adding a one-sentence recognition of a memorial garden, and possibly the fact that engravings are involved, to our bylaws. And it would be eventually, could be, if we decide to do it, could be then brought before the congregation at the 2024 annual meeting. So what I'm proposing is that, and I have an actual motion, as you might expect, but just a little bit ahead of that, the issue seems to beg a report and an opinion from the Memorial Garden as to whether we need the Memorial Garden team, whether we even need any mention in the bylaws that we are committed to a Memorial Garden in perpetuity. So with that little bit of background, I move, and I'll be able to send this to Marilyn if we don't change it or however we modify it. I move that the following 2 possible wordings for a single amendment to the bylaws regarding adding recognition of our Memorial Garden be sent for review and comment to the Memorial Garden team, with the intent that the team offer advice, including possibly that such an amendment isn't needed, or alternate wording to the options presented. Upon return of this advice or recommendation, the board may then decide whether to propose a bylaw amendment regarding the Memorial Garden to the congregation during the 2024 annual meeting. And the 2 options that I propose would be, in one instance, UUCS shall establish and maintain in perpetuity a memorial garden, period. And the second option would be that with a little bit more, saying UUCS shall establish and maintain in perpetuity a memorial garden where names of members and friends may be engraved and remembered. So my motion is that we send those 2 options to the Memorial Garden team and a way to report back from them before we'd actually decide what to do. So that motion needs a second if we're going to proceed with any action.
Second.
Okay, discussion. By the way, guys, I put those 2 options that Tom just described that he wants to send to the Memorial Garden team. I put them in the chat if you want to look at them there. And Tom's proposal, the motion, to repeat it, is to send these 2 options to the Memorial Garden team for feedback before the board puts them on the, proposes them as amendments to the bylaws. Correct? In summary?
Yeah, except when they come back, we would still have the option to not do anything at all. But what we're
Sure.
doing here is just
Sure.
authorizing that it be sent to the Memorial Garden team for a report back.
So why would they support option 1 and not option 2? What would they do instead of engraving?
It's just to clarify that it includes engraving, which we have on our big basalt columns. We have dozens and dozens of names engraved for people who actually have supported and paid a fee to, and there's actually an account, that marked Memorial Garden account with several $1,000s in it. So one just emphasizes and includes the engraving concept and the other one does not.
Yeah, okay. Any other discussion about sending Tom's proposal or a motion to send this to the Memorial Garden team for feedback?
I really just want to say how much I like it. Good job, Tom. Hopefully has her hand up.
Can I
Go,
just
Lynn.
ask you to also send option 3, which is to do nothing, to the Memorial Garden team?
Oh,
Hmm.
huh.
With the approval of the second, I would add that to be option 3.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good.
I approve of that.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Dick, since you seconded it, I think?
I think I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then there's an
I
option
think.
3 involved, which is to do nothing.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of sending 3 options to the Memorial Garden team for feedback? Before we include them as, or not, as amendments?
Favor.
Okay. Motion passed. Very nice. Thank you.
Was that unanimous, I think?
Yes.
Okay. I'll send those off to you, Marilyn.
Okay, well, we were ahead for a little while and now we're a little bit behind, but I'm up next on the agenda with the budget priorities, which I will very briefly explain that I didn't. This is something the board typically does every year. Lynn and Tom can tell you about that. I haven't had a chance to research this with Rebecca and refresh everyone's memories about what we've put together as board budget priorities in the past. But it's somewhat moot, just FYI. Just because, like, I know that for one of those things was what's that fund we have for, fixing up long-term kind of maintenance fund that we have?
Capital
At one
reserve.
point, we prioritized that, right? But it's again somewhat immaterial, I should say, not moot, but what priorities we might have. We're kind of in a place where budget priorities are fairly obvious of taking care of the staff and keeping basics going. So I mean, there's no motion or anything. This is just kind of an FYI from me, but I wanted to give you guys an update on that. Ask for any discussion, I suppose, if you have it, about budget priorities. We're not too far away from the budgeting season. Don't we usually start that in February, Todd? Maybe March, actually, because,
Yeah, our budget summit will be first week of March this
right,
year.
right. Any thoughts? Anybody wants to share there? Okay, great. Moving on. The next thing is also on my for me to go ahead, Tom. Did I hear a comment?
Nope, not for me.
I have to flip over to the I can only see one thing at a time. Sorry. So if you raise your hand, I can't see you right at this moment. So the next thing for me to bring up to the board and kind of explain was some events, I suppose. And this is just for discussion and information for the board about a policy. And this is, again, back to the Sun in our church newsletter and the ops team. And I may call on Doug and Todd to help with some of the facts because I wasn't there, but I would like to explain about a issue that arose back in November, I believe, when the INUC and UUCS were having some kind of joint event, and it was being published in the Sun, and there was we decided to, based on a policy, I believe it's a policy, remove that from the Sun because it was this joint event with an organization that we're not kind of friends with. You kind of heard, at least maybe, let me be careful not to say not friends with. That we haven't established any goals in our church or organization to, in a cross-organization way to mend the lines. So anyway, if anybody, Doug, if you were there, or Todd, if you want to add to the facts on the ground about what happened in that ops team meeting, I wanted to bring it up so we could have a discussion and the board could understand what happened.
Well, there was one little bit of history there that Todd can maybe clarify. In July of 2020, the ops team was faced with this decision, and they made what they call a policy decision to not have any publication that shared the name of the other church, INUUC. And then it came up, you know, as you said, in November, more than 2 years later. So what happened recently, I don't know in the ops team.
The main thing that happened was Todd's response, so maybe he'd like to share it.
Well, I can't remember my exact response in that meeting, Doug. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm happy to say how I feel about it right now. And largely, you may remember that there was a year of hell for a lot of us, including myself, perhaps most of all, from a group of people that, in my opinion, took over the church, or at least had the reins on the church, who were colluding with the UUA to get rid of me, and would not stop at anything, even hurting the church by creating a conflict that didn't need to exist, that could have been handled a completely different way. And when we had a vote of a board that was supportive of my ministry, that group left, period, with a letter. We never saw any of them again. There was no opportunity to talk, to communicate, to mend fences, to talk about what had happened. They just were gone, and they went to the news media and said, hey, there was a split. The church split. We didn't split. We splintered. And continued to say things about us that just weren't true, including on their website. There's never been any real conversation about what happened. Now, there are some individuals in our church that maintain friendships with those folks. Great, they should. I mean, it's not our church's responsibility to maintain those friendships for people, but I'm glad that some folks have been able to. But this was ultimately an article that came in under the auspices of the UU Women's Group, which we have a UU Women's Group in our church. So it got into the Sun, as I understand it, thinking that it was one of our events, one of our church events. It wasn't. It was an event that was really started initially by the INUU group that had invited a select group of women from our church, as they have every right to do. And then later wanted to meet again and put this in our church newsletter as if it were one of our events, and it wasn't. And so a lot of us, including myself, do not believe that we should normalize relationships until there is some truth and reconciliation. And so that is why we took it out. And as Tom said, there was a policy some time ago based upon input from our earliest congregational meetings after those events, in which some folks literally suggested that we share our space and our resources. And there was quite a bit of disagreement about that within a congregation. Folks not at all wanting us to do that. So until there is some sort of reconciliation and some honesty, I don't think that we should do this. And so that's where the policy comes from and why the policy exists. And that is why this information, once we found out where it was coming from, was removed. And there have been other attempts to put it in again, but we're a little more savvy now.
What is the policy? Exactly.
There isn't a policy of the board in the board
Not
policy.
board, it's ops team policy, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't have the policy honestly with me, but whatever it states prohibits us from
Publication in the Sun, is that what it's?
publishing things that are not from organizations that are considered like-minded.
Is it?
So
I have-
Tom may have it, so.
Yeah, I have what was done back in July of 2020. But I don't know whether you actually whether the ops team actually stated something, because I do have what Rebecca sent me from 2020. And I can read it, or if it's important, but one of the things I think is this, we're a policy governance church. Is this kind of a policy one that should be directed by non-elected people, the ops team, versus the board as a policy governing body? But what was said was in that meeting, in the minutes of that meeting, was we discussed the use of our social media accounts, the Facebook page and group. These tools are for the use by our friends and members to communicate personal and upcoming events and to share our community partners' events. We, the ops teams, voted that former members are not allowed to use our communications, for example, posting to our social media accounts or submitting to our publications. This includes former teams and or groups who have unaffiliated themselves from our church. Rebecca will amend our policies, assuming ops team policies, to reflect this decision.
Yeah, and I think it's perfectly normal for the ops team to create its own policies as long as they don't conflict with policies the board has established. So if the board wants to establish a different policy that would override the operations team, I mean, go ahead. It is generally the staff and therefore the operations team that is responsible for maintaining our publications and our social media. So it's appropriate for, in my opinion, for the ops team to make policies when these sort of questions come up.
Might I suggest that we, now that the issue has been brought before us, that the board think about it and that we put it on agenda to see if we want to take any action at another meeting.
I would agree with that. I would also point out, just as part of the discussion, and I think we had it on an agenda item maybe in a previous meeting or two this year, about a bylaw. This is just part of the calculus, I suppose, or for us to think about as a board. A request from the social justice team to allow them to use the UUCS as a petition signer, the name of our church, to sign a petition, which is covered under a bylaw that the board needed to have some kind of approval of that process, which seems something of an overlap with this kind of social media and Sun kind of public relations, outward facing sort of in a way. So just something to think about. I guess we could read through those things and discuss it further, as Tom suggested, in a future meeting.
Yeah, and on a future meeting, there really is a specific request through Nancy Avery from the Social Justice Council that they be allowed to use the church name. So that's something we need to formally consider since it comes from one of our teams.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'll throw another monkey wrench in the works here, because
Go for it.
policy, that policy, I did not read it that way when it was changed, but I understand where it's coming from. One, it violates I think the intent of our free congregation, and I think it also conflicts with my contract right?
Which one are you talking about? Excuse me.
The new bylaw that says that nobody can use the name without the board's permission.
It says
It
something
u-
to that effect. Yeah,
It
right.
used,
Oh, yeah.
it used to be that we couldn't, represent the church without the board's permission, but different teams could represent their teams. But now we're saying that you can't even use the name without the board permission. And that's, if somebody were to come up, if you're out marching on the street, what church are you with? The Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, that becomes a violation of this. So I think, that's going to need to be altered, hopefully by the next annual meeting to reflect a more open process that allows people the freedom to share their opinions as members of our church and as teams of our church, even if we're not speaking on behalf of the entire church. So that in the old days, that wouldn't have been a problem for the social justice team to represent themselves as supporting an issue.
Well, actually, I went back to research that, and I found that when we changed that, which was Article 9 in the overall revision, that we didn't really change. We changed hardly anything with regard to that. The language that we added pretty much said, it read, in fact, it read, neither the staff, an ad hoc committee, ministry, or a team member of the church may represent the church or the UUA, issue written statements or make media releases in the name of or containing the name of the church or the UUA unless approved by the operations team in consultation with a board of trustees or the entire congregation. So and that's why we changed the language, because it said it had so many people in the approval process, and the bottom line was it was the board of trustees. So we changed it so that we got right down to the bottom of the line, which was the board of trustees. But we can certainly revisit it, and if that's the case, it needs to be on the agenda for either a committee to recommend changing it or the board to change Article 9, Section 1.
Yeah, there used to be a clause in there too that and maybe it's in a different section that would, said something, unless it is an issue that has already been settled, by the UUA, actually was I think that's my paraphrase. But if it was like a study action issue or there was some statement that was already made and that we collectively agree this is what we stand for, like marriage equality, we don't need to go through a big bunch of hoops to say, yes, we support this. Right. So and I wouldn't want it to be, I wouldn't want it to say that now because I'm not as trusting of the UUA, but that's what allowed us the freedom to get around. We had this conversation when I first came, and I don't want to belabor it. The congregation said that it wants to have a say when the congregation's name goes out there as a whole, right? And unless it's something that's already been sort of pre-approved, so to speak, sort of pre-agreed upon, right? We shouldn't have to agree anew that marriage equality is something our church stands for. But, right now, the way it reads, I think it's very restrictive, and I don't think that was the intent. But there was an issue, if you remember, with the group of INUU that sent out a survey to our community, asking them these really leading questions. Would you want to be part of our church if you knew that we were racist or something, something to that effect, right? And so something had to be done to make sure that didn't happen. So I think this was an attempt to fix that. But I also think we need to ease up on our teams. The social justice team should be able to represent itself, in my opinion, on these issues. It takes too long. The thing they wanted to sign has already been signed.
It's past, yeah, it doesn't matter much anymore, probably.
A future agenda item, huh?
That's what I put in my notes as a future agenda item. Did you have something you wanted to add to that real quick, Dick?
Yeah, well, I think too, as Todd said, it's important for a social justice team to be able to sign on something as the social justice team, making it very clear you don't represent the whole church, just the team. Or if you're out on a march and someone says who you're, where you're from, you can say, well, we're members of, your church is Spokane, but we don't represent the whole church. We're just members there, or we're members of the justice team, or something like that. That's a good compromise, and if that needs clarification, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we should
The
put
news
it on
media
it.
I'm sorry, the news media may say Dick Burkhart representing the Unitarian Universalist Church, no matter what you say to them, right?
No,
because
but if I make a real strong point of that, like if the media is present, there should be advice that make a very strong point that you're not representing the church, you're just a member of it.
Yeah, but not everybody will.
Or a member of a group there that some people at the church are concerned, right? And media are often sensitive to such things. They often are like, they often quote sources which are inside and versus official pronouncements. And media is used to official spokesmen versus covert whistleblowers and that kind of thing, leakers.
Okay, moving along, if it's okay, we'll move along. We got about 10 minutes left, and there are two kind of important items to cover in the agenda before we even get to the old or other business. So it'd be great if we could tackle these two. One is the ops team report, Doug, from you, if you have anything to share there. And then Tom has prepared some policy and procedures additions and emailed those to us. That will take probably a little bit of time to talk through. So, so let's go ahead, Doug.
Yes, I've got something about the ops team, but I'm going to throw in, you didn't see my raised hand on the last issue.
Sorry.
I just want to say quickly that I feel like this issue about the use of the sun it is much more important than the issue of whether or not we leave the UUA, because this is an issue that exists right within our congregation and is of concern to, there's at least a small groundswell asking for, some resolution around this issue. So as far as us getting it on the agenda in the future, I think that's very important. That's all I need to say about that. Okay, on the ops team, so I missed the meeting. I was traveling and didn't see the email, but I have gotten Rebecca the minutes have not been published yet, but Rebecca sent me a quick little letter about what happened at the meeting at the ops team meeting earlier this month. So I'm going to read that to you. She said, we spent the majority of the meeting going over line items for the preliminary budget. At our next meeting, we'll review the finished preliminary budget for the budget summit, which will be held on March 6th at 1 p.m. on Zoom. Make a note of, no, let's see, they don't need to read that. Let's see, members should be attending. Julianne Morris volunteered to find a contractor to install the new fire doors in the RE wing. What is that? Education wing. The social justice coordinating council stepped up to operate the coffee cart in the foyer. They want to use it to fund the Make It Happen fund. That's about it.
Great.
I can repeat any of that if anybody wants me to.
Do you have any idea at what point or how often they're going to get the social justice team's going to get into looking about operating that equipment?
I have no idea. No. Rebecca might, or Todd, do you?
Yeah, I know that they're going to try to start this weekend, actually. Peggy's going to be meeting with Brian Denishian, who used to be the master of running it, to train her. And they want to use it for a while at least. They're thinking on these movie nights for the first few weeks, as long as everything's working accordingly and whatnot. But the idea is that we have a batch of young children that are really moving towards those teenage years again. And rather than get rid of it and miss it, we thought it might be nice to, if at least the social justice team or any team that wants to fundraise with it for a while, could keep it going until maybe the kids might be ready to jump in there.
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tom, would you like to try to cover, so we've talked a lot about policies tonight. What the next and probably last thing on the agenda we'll be able to cover tonight are some policies and procedure additions for our Board of Trustees policies. So, Tom, can I leave that to you?
I'll find my notes on that one. Let's see, I gotta find this. Okay. Well, and this may be something that I'll just go over for clarifying purposes. And I did send out a memorandum that included a number of items, and one of them was there's some adjustments to the policy and procedures that came up when Lynn and I were working on them, but we didn't want to add anything new until after you'd adopted whatever was going on at the time. But one of the items, and I'll just go down there in some of the documents you got in blue. One of them is adding a statement that ensures easy and prominent access to audio visuals of the meetings, as well as post-meeting audiovisual recordings. And this would be in the board policies. It isn't clearly stated, and a number of times I have gone and looked for what I considered fairly recent minutes or audio visual, and they just aren't there yet. And I know sometimes it takes 3 and 4 months before they show up. And I think we have an obligation to have that show up sooner. Now, putting it in the board policy and procedures means it's our responsibility. But actually, it can only be done by the church staff. But that was one of them. The other one of the next ones was under that the board be clearly authorized to be able to present amendments to the bylaws to the congregation. We've done that historically, but it isn't clearly stated that we have that authority. And if it was in the board policies by, say, a majority vote or even a 2/3 vote, that would make sure that we had that authority. Another one would be, and this is a pretty strong one. Last year during the congregational meeting leading up to it, the board last year decided that one of the proposed amendments from a member was conflicting and confusing, and they just said, we're not going to present it. It creates more problems than it solves. The bylaws kind of said if a member wants to present something, they're able to do that. So I thought, since that was a board action last year that did that we should put in there. And so I wrote something that says review and comment of member proposed amendments as per the bylaws article and section, including rejection for presentation to the membership of such amendments if found by a majority or a 2/3 majority to be redundant or duplicate with the existing bylaws. So that would have given the board, at least in its policies, a clear authority to do what they did last year. So that's in the document that was circulated. And then the other one was one of the other, there are only 2 more. One of them would be that the executive committee, board's executive committee may be assigned specific duties and responsibilities, but shall not act on behalf of the board unless pre-authorized by a majority of the board. And that was intended to make it clear that if the majority of the board wanted some action to be taken before the next regular board meeting, that they could assign the executive committee some responsibility to investigate it and maybe even authorize them to make a decision. And to me, it would create some flexibility that would be hard to abuse, but might be very handy to have clarified. Then the final one was to add a statement that no trustee shall make any effort to influence the operations team or the manager in pursuit of its duties or responsibilities. And this kind of has to do with this whole issue that we just discussed about the sun. It would not be appropriate at this point for the board to go to the operations team and change what they just did with the sun, with their policy with the sun, nor for me or any of the rest of the board members, trustees, to go and say, I don't like what you did. That would be clearly in conflict with this new thing that I would propose adding. That's notwithstanding that the congregation or the board, the congregation could grant the authority to the board to do such things as change the policy regarding the sun, or the board could adopt that. But just so that we could collectively or individually go and criticize, in this case, Rebecca or the volunteers on the operations team and Todd. So that's a summary of the various ones that I suggested adding. And because we're short on time, we have to do a little bit of business to plan for the next meeting. I would just say, I'd like this to be on the agenda item with enough time in the next meeting to actually give consideration.
Yeah, understood. We did run out of time. Thank you for presenting all of these and for writing them up. I guess we'll need to take a fairly substantial amount of time to kind of talk through all of these additions that you're suggesting.
Or we could do them 2 or 3 at a time, or only
Right. Or that
one
might
at a
be,
time.
yeah, that might be even a better idea. Maybe
Yeah.
we should do that. Thank you for preparing them and for representing them. They are in your email, everybody, from Tom, and they're essentially the text in blue, I think, are the I was following along while you were reading through them, Tom. There's a lot of stuff in that email. It's kind of in the middle. Not too hard to find once you scroll down a little bit. So yes, let's put those on the agenda, maybe 2 for the next board meeting. We got a couple of things now to talk about in the next board meeting. So with that, real quickly, the any other business section, I want to talk about our next meeting, which is the proposed times are down there at the bottom of the agenda. Todd, you'll be out on sabbatical, but our next executive committee meeting to make the agenda is on the 21st. At 4 p.m. And I apologize to everybody that made the executive committee meeting for this last time, that I lost track of when that was. We'd already decided, but here it is. And the next board meeting on the 28th. So right before Todd gets back.
Who would be the third member on the exec team, since we've been using a floating person rather than
We need a floating volunteer. Yes. Yes. It was Catherine last month, or for this month.
I
we have
would
a volunteer?
volunteer. I would volunteer if no one else does.
Okay, great. Tom, that'd be awesome. On the exec committee. Any problems with the date or any big showstoppers there? Look okay for our next meeting? Anything else we absolutely need to discuss tonight before we adjourn? All right, awesome. Gavel down. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.